All right. I think maybe we're about to go live. I love how Dodzy paused it as we're transitioning. So we are live now. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're excited to have you all here for another monthly Searching for a Job in Tech webinar. We're always excited every month right now to be working with our friends at Heartwork Staffing. And we just want to cover various tips monthly to help you on your job search. So whether you're in tech or not, I really think a lot of the tips we have kind of cover a variety of industries, and opportunities are just great best tips. So if you're watching this live, share it in your social media, tag Techlahoma, and let people know that this is going on now. Mostly any friends that you know are currently in a job search, and we can find a way to help them. So next slide. All right, so just a little bit about Techlahoma. Our mission is to advance Oklahoma's grassroots technology community. You can learn more about us at techlahoma.org. Diana, Becca, and myself are all Techlahoma members, as well as Dodzy, who is our awesome streamer for today. And so we're excited that you're here, and hopefully you'll want to learn a little bit more about Techlahoma. You can go to the next slide. We are a nonprofit. So we do always encourage everyone to get involved, and also to keep in mind that this is a community event, a community organization, and that we do have a code of conduct. We want everyone to treat each other with dignity and respect within our stream, within our chat channels and our Slack. And so if you have would like more information about our code of conduct, you can go to conduct.techlahoma.org. And then a little bit about who is a part of Techlahoma. It can cover a variety of people. So whether you're just getting into technology, you're wanting to transition into the technology industry, technology is a huge part of everything we do now. So it might just be that you want to learn more about what the people in your technical departments are talking about, or you want to learn yourself. You might be a local business that's wanting to engage and find talent and work with people. Or you might just want to get involved with other people who do web development or hardware or civic tech. You want to provide that opportunity of supporting your community with your technology. We have a variety of options in order for you to get involved. So next slide. We have an upcoming event that we're a part of that we wanted to share with all of you in the Oklahoma City area. I know a lot of times we get some people joining us. Hold on one second. I just had to fix my video really quick. Hopefully that helped. We have an upcoming event in the Oklahoma City area. I just wanted to invite you all to an in-person event, which I know we haven't had in a while, which will be happening this coming Thursday, April 29th. This is not a new group. It's just a whole lot of us getting together to bring people together in technology, startups, and entrepreneurships in the Oklahoma City area. We'd love you to attend as members of our community, so we hope you can be there. Some people might be hiring, so it's always a great event to just network and get to know more people. And also, just in regards to getting involved, we have our user groups, we have conferences and workshops. And one way for you to get involved with us today, we do not have our chat live currently. You can use emotes, I believe, but Dodzy has been awesome in posting in the Slack channel how to engage in conversation today. So we use Slack a lot. We have a channel that is set up for all you, just called Tech Jobs Webinar. I know, super generic channel name, but we just figured it would get associated with this conversation and get you engaged in working with our community. And it's awesome. Ford has already posted a comment in our Slack. So it's awesome that you're already starting to engage. So thank you so much, Ford. So anyone else who's joining us, please log into Slack and click the link that has been posted by Dodzy in the chat. So again, that's a little bit about Techlahoma and what we do and why we do it. So now I will pass it on to our awesome member of Heartwork Staffing, Rebekah Law.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, that sounds really exciting. That event next week looks, I mean, that's quite the list. So that looks really cool. Um, so today what we're going to talk about is kind of, so we're in general talking about company research. And I think about when I thought about like, okay, we could just jump in and talk about how to do company research. I can give you the tips and tricks on how to kind of dive in. But I think the first thing we need to maybe like step back and think, why? Why do we even need to do company research? What purpose is there for it? And so there are three really main purposes that I kind of came up with. And this is not, the only list of reasons, but these are the top three, I would say. So the first one I think is pretty obvious. This is probably what you came here for, like thinking, okay, well, it's to be able to prepare me for an interview. I'm going to get those into that interview. I want to know what to expect, what to do. So definitely, and we're going to cover that today and how you can be prepared in terms of company research. But there are two other really main things that I don't think people think about as much. So one, doing company research can actually help you land that interview. So this is something that can then put you into a place where you can get an interview. So we're going to talk a little bit about how company research is associated with actually landing you that interview, not just landing you the job. And then the third thing is to help you determine fit. So you'll hear me probably say this another time during the session, and we have probably talked about this multiple times, but anytime you were thinking about joining a company or looking to join a company, an interview and joining a company is not a one-way street. It is always about a two-way street. It is about two-way fit. Do you fit them? Do they fit you? And I think that that's something really important and something that we forget about. And you can learn a lot about a company through some of the tips and tricks that I'm going to share with you today. And a lot of that will decide, do I actually even want to work for this company? And I think that's an important thing for you to determine for you. So we're actually going to work our way backwards. Let's work our way first to just kind of determining fit. So this is something, again, I think of all these things in like stair steps and kind of like working our way towards like landing a job or landing an interview. The first thing about determining fit is actually you need to do a little homework. So you need to determine and think through about yourself and the jobs you've been successful in and the jobs you haven't been as successful in, and just kind of really process this. So anytime that we sit down with a candidate and talk about, because they're thinking about going into a new role, one of the major questions we talk about are, what are your top three priorities? Doesn't have to be a set number. Maybe you have a number one, like as long as it has this, I literally could care less about absolutely anything else. Or maybe you have 10 and it has to meet all 10 or I'm not interested. And that's okay. It's okay if you have one, it's okay if you have 10, but you need to know what those are. And so to kind of give you some sort of process of how to think about that, there's a lot that can go into that. So maybe for you, maybe it's about pay. That's a pretty common, I need to provide for my family or I need to provide for me, and it needs to be this amount of money. But even with pay, like think about like, well, what's encompassing that? Like, are we talking just salary? Are we talking benefits? Like, is health care really important to you? Is PTO really important to you? So like thinking about that compensation package, what's really important? So thinking about that. Another thing is location. This is becoming even more of a thing that we're seeing. I talked about this at our last chat, is just how more jobs are going remote. For some people, that's what they love. They want to work remotely. They want to be able to be a digital nomad, work anywhere. And then for other people, like, no, I need that in person, that like face to face. I can overhear someone talking and be able to join a conversation. That's important to me. All those are fine, but you need to make sure you're finding a company that's going to match and fit with that need of yours. But maybe that doesn't matter to you. Maybe it's about the role. Maybe it's about the company size. Maybe it's about stability. So all of these things have different research associated with it. So for a brief rabbit trail, I'm going to talk a little bit, and I don't have slides associated with this, but let's talk through some of these priorities and how you can then go find the information you need. Okay, so let's talk pay. So unfortunately, a lot of times that's really hard to find. A lot of jobs don't necessarily post pay. If you are working with a recruiter, 99.9% of the time, they should know that information. They should know the pay range. You talk about your priorities, y'all can determine if that company's fit. So what some research you could do is actually working with a recruiter in that sense. Let's talk location. So locations beyond just remote or not, or it's in Oklahoma City, or it's in Norman, or it's, you know, in Kansas City. Something that I think a lot of people don't think about is the fact that what job are you interested in, and then you're interested in moving forward. So maybe a lot of the company here is, you know, they're based in Oklahoma City, but where's their leadership? What if you're interested in going into a leadership role and all of their leadership roles are in Atlanta? That could be fine with you. And you're like, hey, I'm willing to move to Atlanta if I can get a leadership role. But that's good information for you to know. So ways where you can figure that out is you can go on LinkedIn, go to the company and look at their company list. And you can find out a lot of information by doing this. So on LinkedIn, if you go to a company, it says, here are the people that are on LinkedIn that work at this company. And so that's not going to show everybody, but that's going to be a good portion of most companies are going to be on LinkedIn. And so from there, you can see, okay, where's this team located? Where are the leadership located? What does that leadership look like? What do the teams look like? So maybe another priority for you is diversity. And, you know, I want to see kind of diversity at all levels in all teams. What does that diversity look like to you? Because diversity could be, you know, it could be race. It could also be education. Like, do their leaders not have, you know, a bachelor's degree? Maybe that's what you want, or maybe that is education's a priority to you. So something I want you to hear me say in all of this is there isn't a right and wrong as to what your priorities are and what you prioritize. Like, just because you think, oh, well, that would be a nice bonus if it had X, Y, Z. So maybe that could be information you're just gathering, or maybe I want to, you know, help provide change. I can, you know, be a change agent in that. But just so you know, like, everybody has different priorities, and that's okay. So another thing that could be that you find out through LinkedIn or through Glassdoor or something else would be the company size. Maybe for you, you know, working for a large company is really important, or maybe working for a really small company or a medium-sized company. And even within that, you can figure out, like, just because it's a super large organization, maybe they work in more pods, you know, they work more these teams. So even though this company is like, you know, 20,000 people, but my team is like my family. And you can figure that stuff out through just kind of one, through the interview. But let's say we're talking obviously at this point before the interview, you can check out their social media. You can check out their photos that they have. Are these, you know, are they getting together? Do they have photos of going to lunches or celebrating birthdays? Like, what do they do in that regard, if that matters to you? Another priority I've seen is stability. Somebody's like, I just need a stable company. So the way to research that would be to look at the news. Look at, especially this last year, did layoffs happen? Were they recession proof? We did go through a little bit of a recession. You know, like, how did they do in 2008? You know, take a look at maybe some of the major milestones and major sort of layoff seasons that we have had. And Oklahoma has definitely experienced several of those and hasn't been, you know, has been affected by that. But maybe there are certain companies that have actually thrived in those times, or have been able to stay stable even though they're losing money. They're like, we're prioritizing our people, and we were able to make them work. You know, my company, for example, our boss sat us down and said, about this time last year, she was like, hey, I've looked at the end of the year, even if we don't do any placements, which for the record, we beat our goal, we did great. So, that wasn't an issue, but it gave us less stress by the beginning of the year for her to sit down and say, hey, even if we didn't, I could still pay your salary. You'll be okay. And this is how that looks, and so look at those market trends for that company. Industry. So maybe the industry is really important to you. I've had a candidate tell me, like, I will make $1 a year if I could work for this, the space industry or something like that. That matters to me, or a company or something like that. And so if a particular industry is important, check out that company and what are the products that they work on, and what's the industry that they are in, because sometimes that might not be really easily available on the surface to know what industry exactly that company is in. And so take a look at their website, take a look at the types of products that they have, the type of Google reviews that they're getting, what are their customers saying about them, that sort of thing. Maybe growth potential is important to you. One way to see this is going on LinkedIn and being able to see the titles. Like, so does everybody in the organization, is it a more of a flat organization, or does there seem to be a pretty steady progression? Okay, they have like L1s and L2s and L3s and L4s. And so I can see myself going in this progression if that matters to you. Or the opposite. Let's say you're like, no, I don't want that. I want a super flat organization. So you can see, okay, well, what kind of roles do people have? All right. I think that's enough about that priority piece. But that's your homework. That's for you to determine, like, what are those priorities for you? Because honestly, it'll make it easier when you are determining potentially between two organizations, and you can look back at your notes and being like, you know what, when I started this journey, I was really frustrated with my last organization and my previous organizations because of XYZ. This company meets XYZ. This other company pays maybe $10,000 more, but they are missing the mark on all three of my top priorities. Fourth was my pay. So maybe that can help you determine, that's important. Kristen, do you have something to add in here?
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that you're going through this, and I know you still have motivation and culture to cover, but, this is the uncomfortable fact of searching for a job is like dating, right?
Yes.
But you think if you're going to have somebody in your life for an extended amount of time, what are the things that you're not going to accept in that relationship? And I think the same thing goes for the job. I know in some cases people just really need a job, and so that could be an issue as to maybe why you're applying for what you're applying for. But I think very much looking into what's happening with this company, how does that impact what I think is important? Obviously, pay is important to most of us, and what your salary is going to be in your benefits, and to know your family or your loved ones are taken care of. But beyond that, like, I think you bring up so many great points, because one of the things I mentioned in the Slack channel was, you mentioned doing that research to understand the trends within the industry and the company. So I just kind of noted, like, looking at business journals, looking at the business journal record, I think is what it's called here for Oklahoma, looking at the Oklahoma newspaper, seeing what stories are popping up about that company, TechCrunch. Another one that I like to look at is the top places to work lists. And so look at, what's the survey that some of the company, best place to work, is that what the official?
I think that's right.
Best places to work, which requires at least 80% of your company to respond to. So you're getting, it's not that it's just some random response, but this is 80% of that company telling you, this is why we like to work here, and this is why we stay. And I think that is a valuable list that a lot of people don't go and look for, because if a company you're looking for, or if you're looking for a company to apply for, and that's of importance to you, what do the people say? Then I really recommend looking into a list like best places to work.
No, thank you. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And Kristen, I'm glad that you mentioned too, sometimes we don't get the option of getting to be too picky. Sometimes like you just need a job, and that's a reality. But I hope at some point in your life you get to be picky, and you get to be on that a little bit pickier side. But there might still be a deal breaker that even if you are in that situation where you're just like, even if it means having a job versus not, this is my deal breaker, and being able to know that information ahead of time. So regarding like motivation, what gets you up in the morning? And again, this beginning part is the you getting to be pickier part. Later on, like the next two things, we're going to get to talk a little bit about like, hey, how can you land it? Like I either need it or I want it. And how can I get that? And so, but what does get you up in the morning? I was actually taking a little quiz last night of like what motivates, me. And like there were several different options. Like it was like achievement or affiliation. I'm affiliation, which isn't surprising given, the industry I have found myself in. But with that motivation, the reason why that's important is because let's say you're motivated by the mission. Okay, well then you better know what that mission is for that organization. Like take a look at what their, obviously the obvious thought is to go on their website, take a look at the about us, take a look at the mission, take a look at, their statements. But there are some more subtle things that you can look at if this is important to you. So being a part of like the LGBTQ community, something very important to me is that when I look at applying to a job, I want to see that on there they have, they've gone above and beyond in the discrimination policy. Like there is a legal required discrimination policy, but until recently, sexuality obviously, wasn't necessarily something that was required to be there. And so that kind of showed the next step that a company was taking to have that in their, policy. When you're applying, very at the bottom, it kind of says does not discriminate against race, ethnicity, gender, like these sorts of things. And so that's one subtle place that maybe people don't think to find, but that is a place where it's like, okay, so that says something about this organization. Another thing, if that is really important to you, is taking a look at their social media. Did they have Blackout Tuesday? Is that important to you? What has been kind of their outreach about certain situations going on at a national level? Is that important to you or not? And sometimes it's important and sometimes it's not. And both of those are okay. But these are some of those things that you can see, like, what are those teammates that you're having? What are their Twitter feeds look like? What does the company, LinkedIn is probably where everybody's going to be mostly pretty just by the book, type of thing. But you looking at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter is definitely a place where you can start to see a little bit of personality coming out. And so taking a look at those different mediums, how are people interacting? How do they interact with their customers? Sometimes like even just you see a customer complaint on like a Google review or on something. Are they responding with kindness back? Does that matter to you? Like what is it there? So what motivates you? Like what gets you up in the morning? Maybe it's that achievement piece. Or Kristen, what are your thoughts?
Ford mentioned in the chat and kind of mentioned their 3 priorities. And one included valuing their employees as a living, thriving team, and they value the communication and collaboration. And I like what you were mentioning about social media, because I think it's interesting to me what companies love to make posts about their employees and how well they're doing or how great they did on a project, or hey, this is our team doing this thing together, versus companies that are just very like, this is what we do and that's it. So not that that means that needs to be a method of determining that value, but you figure for a lot of companies and organizations, the fact that your own team wants to talk about you and share their experience and share what it's like to work for them, that is really important. So Ford, I don't know if that might help kind of as you're looking for, Ford's actually looking for apprenticeship options, and it might be interesting to see, are there companies posting about the interns that they're bringing in for the summer, and that they're mentoring people, and those keywords. Ford might help you to determine who are these businesses that are willing to give an opportunity to someone to teach and support and educate them, because I have heard from some companies, and again, nothing's right or wrong, but they don't want to bring in interns solely because they got to get some stuff done. It's not that they don't care. It's just, if it's a smaller organization and they don't have the manpower to mentor, develop, and coach, they're trying to just not offer that because they know they can't offer what they should offer. So I think that's also important to keep in mind, is if people are really trying to push it, the hope is they have a program to really support those who they're trying to develop.
No, absolutely. And if anybody has any questions about that, like, I don't ever discuss companies or things like that, obviously, on these things, but feel free to reach out to me or anybody on our team, because even though we don't place interns, we obviously hear a lot and know a lot about the community, especially in Oklahoma City, which companies are more open to internships. Or maybe you can go ahead and share something too, Diana.
Yeah, so this is reminding me of I guess a workshop I attended yesterday for architecture students who are immigrants, and what do they need to look for when they're looking for a new job and trying to fit into the culture here and everything. And one of the things that was pointed out was retention. How long have people been there? How long do you need to, what is a good retention rate and a good retention length of time and things like that?
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. And that is sometimes where, even like LinkedIn can be really helpful. And there you can even see, what background did this person, I want this job. What was their background that got them here? And maybe you might find out that they started as an intern and then they worked their way in, or maybe they worked at this other company as an intern. And then, like, you can kind of maybe roadmap some other options and some other paths that you're like, oh, that now just opened up where I might apply and what I might look into, by kind of diagramming out kind of the paths that the people that you really trust or want to be like. Now, I will say, and we probably will mention this the entire year for any topic that we come across, is networking. And so not only can you go, stalk someone's LinkedIn, go ahead and connect with them, write them a message. But I'm getting ahead of myself because that's my next slide. So the final piece in here is thinking about culture, and culture can include so many different things. A lot of about what we already talked about. Do they go to lunches? Do they celebrate each other's victories? Even like, what does the dynamic in the office look like? Do they have photos of their office? Like, are you a person who prefers to have an office by yourself? Do you like the bullpen kind of idea? Do you like, some sort of dividers, at least a little bit? That can kind of help. And like, what level of collaboration do people have in that space as well? So that can kind of help you, and even like asking those questions in an interview, because determining fit is before the interview, but it is throughout the interview process as well, is really important there. Okay, so let's move on. How about like how it can help you get an interview? So this is where that like networking piece comes to play really heavily. So when we're talking about, I have actually, for one of, when I was looking for an internship at one point, and I was applying, but I was kind of a non-traditional sort of person that would normally have these internships. So I had to get a little bit creative. So what I was doing was, not only was I applying, but I was also looking on their website for like contact info, or I looked on LinkedIn for somebody that I thought might be a hiring manager in that team or something like that. And I would reach out to them and be like, hey, here's my situation. Just so you know, I did go ahead and apply. I'm really excited, and here's why I'm excited. And it's kind of a little bit more of a living, breathing cover letter than just kind of like, here's my stamp and I'm submitting this. But you are just actively engaging. You're clearly willing to do the research to try to find who those people are and going ahead and making that effort.
Yeah, I was going to say too, as somebody who interviews candidates, one thing that makes people stand out is those who have done the research, understand what our mission is and what we do, and they show passion for what we do, that this isn't going to be something where they just clock in and clock out and go home, that this is something that they actually really care about.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to make you stand out. We would rather hire somebody who has the passion for the position than someone who checks all the boxes.
Yeah, no, and I think that this is one way definitely you can show that passion. Like, hey, this is, and you can even at that point say some of the research things that you found that we're going to talk about in the next slide. You can just say like, hey, here's what I've heard, here's what I've seen about you. I'm really excited. If you need any information, like, let me know. And I know that this makes a lot of people uncomfortable. This is the piece that a lot of, people are just like, I don't want to have to sell myself. I don't, but think of it more like I think of it more of like a learning experience. You're educating yourself. You're going out and figuring out, you're like a hunter, and trying to find out like, what is it about this organization? What is in here, that sort of thing. So this is one way that you can get an interview, honestly, because a lot of companies are getting 300 to 500 applicants at a time. And how do they determine between those? Like, there's a number of different ways, but one way to kind of get your name up a little bit higher is for them to see that name and be big. And then when they're going through all those applications, they're like, wait, Kristen Garcia, that sounds familiar. Like, oh yeah, she wrote me that note. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to spend an extra 30 seconds looking at her information as opposed to the normal just 30 seconds that I look, and so anything you can get to give yourself a little more face time is helpful. Another way that you can maybe get an interview is, I know I talk LinkedIn a lot. If you don't have one, you need to get one. It is how the industry works a lot. But who works there? Maybe you didn't even know you have a connection of somebody that works there. And the people who know people, you are higher likelihood of getting an interview and higher likelihood of landing the job if you know somebody. One, you've made a good impression. I suppose this would not work very well if you've had a very negative interaction with them or something like that. But know who works there. However, let's say you did have a very negative interaction and you're like, oh, I didn't know so-and-so is going to be over this department. That means I would report to them. I've had really negative experiences with that person and I'm not really interested in being their subordinate again. Okay, maybe it's not a fit. And maybe that helps you determine that. But finding out who works there and going ahead and reaching out to your network and being like, hey, I'm thinking about this job that's with this company. Do you know anybody? Do you know somebody that I could even just talk to about and like talk to about the company, talk about the role? And a lot of times, like, people like to talk about their roles. They like to talk about their organization, especially if they feel strongly about it. And they're open to those conversations. So try that. Another place would be social media. So like Facebook, Instagram. Who follows them? Maybe you know some people that follow them and they're like, oh, what have you heard about this company? What have you heard about this organization? And kind of figuring out some things from that perspective. Before I continue, is there any other kind of like activity or other people that are kind of chiming in on the chat at the moment?
We've just had some kind of continued conversations in the chat about opportunities at different businesses. And so, I think it is, to a certain extent, we're engaging in what your slide is showing of like, who do you know, where have you worked, what have you seen? And one of the notes I just said in the chat, in case people aren't in there, is a reminder that if you're going to add people on LinkedIn to connect with, please make sure that you include a message as to why you're adding them, mostly if you have no connections whatsoever. And putting in there that you're open to looking for a new job is a totally fine reason to put. At least they have a clear understanding as to why it would be great to hear from you, or why it might be great to connect with you at this moment. I'm very leery sometimes lately, probably more than ever, about adding people, just because I've gotten some very salesy conversations, which I appreciate the hustle, but for some people that could turn them off. So, but the fact that you let them know, I'd like to connect with you. I'm currently open for a job. This is my background. Would love to grab 15 minutes of your time to talk to you about your company. Like that is a great intro to just, hey, they'll remember when they look at a stack of resumes, Becca sent this message, as opposed to just randomly connecting with me and I don't know who she is.
No, and I want, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead, because mine's slightly different.
Okay. Well, I was just going to add, just kind of tack onto there. And it's also perfectly okay. Like, it would actually be good if you look at their trajectory, and you can even mention I'm really intrigued by how you made, so I'm a weirdo, right? Like I'm a former developer and now I'm a recruiter. So I get people all the time asking how did you make that jump? And so it's perfectly fine to reach out to people and probably don't call them a weirdo. I'd be okay with it. But, just saying hey, I'm interested in this industry. How did you make that jump to that industry? Because I'm really intrigued by that. And so just starting a conversation that way. Dana, what did you want to throw in?
That goes perfectly into what I was going to say.
Perfect.
So, yes. So I had gone from when I was getting into tech, the way that I had picked up a lot of my clients when I had my own business, and then ended up being sent this job with OU and being told to apply, was by volunteering. The industry, I decided I was interested in tech. It paid well. It was stable work. That's what I wanted to do. So I started volunteering to be able to get that experience. And then through that, I was able to impress people with what I was capable of and what I was able to do. And that impression that I left on people later, when they came across jobs that they thought would be a good fit for what I'm really good at, they sent it to me and said, here, go apply for this. You'd be great. So that's a really good way of kind of getting your foot in the door if there's something that you really want to do.
Yeah. No, I love that. That. And I think that's especially if you have those companies or those missions and you're just I love this mission. I love this company. And I would literally, sweep the floor if I could work at this company. We'll go sweep their floor, literally just go figure out how you could be helpful to them as an organization. And you can learn a lot about organization by being a volunteer or by being in on that ground floor, rubbing shoulders or going to their fundraisers or their events or that sort of thing. Just kind of start not only networking, but learning about them as an organization. So I love that. So another thing, and I wanted to kind of touch back a little bit about how we were talking about the subtle things. You can also see about tone, the tone that people use in their social media or in their write-ups. Are they saying in a job application, hey, if you don't check all the boxes, apply anyway? What are these little subtle things that they're saying that might speak to the type of culture or organization that they have? Gendered language can be also in here. And I know as a society, we are working towards that. So don't hold that totally against a company that is maybe trying to work towards that. that's a huge change that I think a lot of companies are still working their ways through. All right, so finally, the reason why you came here was like, okay, but how do we actually prepare for an interview? So here's one of the major things is there are very common interview questions regarding researching a company. And so one of those common questions is, why do you want to work here? You know? And so if you go into an interview and you're like, I don't know, it looks like a really good role. Yeah, but why us? Why not, so and so down the street? What makes us different? Here's the thing about companies, and it's like dating, like Kristen said, like I relate this to dating all the time. People want people who want them, right? And I mean, there are people that have a little, like they want to be chased or they want to, whatever, like that's fine too. But most people, like, they want you to be excited about them, and you want them to be excited about you too, right? And so I think one of those things is doing that research ahead of time. Okay, so going on their website, looking at their products, really trying to figure out how their products like go together. I don't know, everybody has a different role that they're applying to. So obviously, like, maybe like a dev lead versus like a DevOps person, or the infrastructure side is going to be different, and so we all have like these different roles that we have in an organization, but understanding the business is very important most of the time. There are exceptions where they're just like, I just want you to write SQL, queries all the time, and that's all, and I don't need you to know how those relate. And if that's good with you because you're achievement oriented and you just want to like get the job done, then that's fine. But kind of understanding the business, understanding what matters to them, understanding how your role fits in the organization, I think you're going to really impress a hiring manager if you can go in instead of saying, and I think you should ask this question at the end too, but instead of just saying like, well, how does my role fit into this like big organization, and being like, so I've done some research. This is kind of where I feel like the value is added for this role, because it looks like you have XYZ products. I'm assuming you have, this sort of system in place for that. What is this role? Like, how do that? And you can start this like conversation, right? So figure out, like, look at their mission, be like, I really love the fact that you all help people find jobs, or I really love the fact that you all are on the cutting edge of technology. Like your stack, we don't see that stack in many companies here in Oklahoma City. And so it's really exciting that we would get to be on the cutting edge of technology. And so know that answer for you. Another common interview question is like, do you know about our competitors? Like, what do you know about about our industry or about our market, or that sort of thing? They might not say competitors specifically, they might be a little bit broad, like, what do you know about our industry? And so having Googled the transportation industry and being like, well, it looks like these are the key players and here's how you fit into the key players. And I'm sure on the chat people are probably going to be able to give extra resources as to maybe where to find those things, but that's going to be important, right? Is to know that industry, what are the like pain points that industry faces, and how can your role help them with maybe some of that business. Another thing too for the hiring manager, so sometimes you get to know who you're going to be talking to and sometimes you don't. If you're working with a staffing agency, most of the time they can tell you who you're going to be interviewing with. And sometimes, like, if you're applying on your own, you're kind of flying blind a little bit in that. But try to find on LinkedIn, like, what that team is. Sometimes they'll say, like, the maybe at least like the team or the department name, or something like that, and try to find out. But if you know the name of your hiring manager and you don't look them up ahead of time, shame on you. Like, you do need to look them up ahead of time. Look at their background. What degree do they have? Or did they not get a degree? Like, where did they work their way up into this organization, or did they hop around and go a little crazy industry wise, like what was their journey? And that's going to help you relate to the person. This is not stalking, this is not like creepy, this is important. Kristen?
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's something I feel like I've heard a lot over the last couple months from different hiring managers is, some job descriptions actually say who you're going to report to. And so take that, who you're going to report to, search for them on LinkedIn or on Google, and consider submitting your cover letter to that person.
Yeah.
Because it shows them, like, I took the initiative to look to see who the director of is, and it's this person. And so if you can find that way to personalize that letter by just putting "Dear so-and-so" at the top of your letter, that could go a long way with them understanding, like, you're already that person who goes out to discover the information that you need to move forward, because that's just maybe an idea of who you are. In the past, I don't think that was necessarily a big focus. To who it may concern, who cares, just submit it. But if you have a way of personalizing things as you're applying for jobs, that will just help people to feel like, oh, wow, they're really in tune with what we're trying to do here. You don't know who they are, and that's totally fine. And also, I think along those lines, you mentioned the stalking, right? With LinkedIn, you do have the option of turning off who you're looking at, so they don't see it. But you know what? I've had people apply for jobs at my organizations, and I start seeing an influx of people wanting to add me. You can always ask somebody, like, I would like to have an informational discussion. I'm applying for the blah, blah, blah team. I see you work adjacent to them or along them. Can I talk to you for like 15 minutes just to learn more about the company? You could do that too by using these people that you've researched. It's a fairly common thing to do that now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you added those additional details because it is true. And if they provide that information and you don't even I think they want to know that I have this like self-starter. I have this person that for a lot of organizations that matters. It matters that you're going to go do that little extra step. And like Kristen said, that can help you maybe even land the interview, or at least even find out about, prepare you better for the interview, because you're like, okay, I understand how these business units work together a little bit more because I was able to have this little informal discussion ahead of time, before the interview. So I think anytime you can do those types of things, that's really important. And the same, even though we're not talking about this, the same goes for after the interview. Do a thank you letter. Reach out, connect with the people, try to take note of who you talked to during that interview, and everybody from any part of that, like, make sure. I sometimes get on these rabbit trails, but I do feel like sometimes when these things come in my head, it's because I've seen people not get a job because of this. You need to be nice to somebody for every single letter that you've ever sent, to walking into that, to the front desk person, all the way to the CEO. Like, it does not matter, because you could literally not get a job because you thought that the front desk person was below you. Like, that's not okay. Like, you are always going to be in an interview. Okay. Side note, done. So also researching the team, like, how does that team work? Who does that person work with? And a lot of times you can see in LinkedIn, because they have, maybe their department or something like that, or on their website, they might have a staff page, and you can kind of see how the levels of the organization work and who works together. And be sure to don't just send a thank you note to the main hiring manager, send a note to every team member. They're going to talk about you. If you and don't send just a copy paste, try to make it personalized as much as possible. They'll say that after, like, oh, wow, so-and-so like reached out to me. Oh yeah, they reached out to me too, kind of thing. Like, that gets them talking. The more you can be on their minds, the better, type of thing. I've probably gone over this mission section a little already, in the previous two slides. But it is important to know their mission. And when you go into an organization and let's say their mission is, about making money. Well, that's okay. That's an okay mission. That is their choice. And it is your choice to then be a part of that company. But then how do you help them make money? And like knowing and researching that ahead of time of like, okay, well, I'm going into this. And well, did you know that at my last organization, I was able to speed production time up. Like we used to, like it took about 24 hours to go live. Now it takes us an hour because I put in these like automation steps, and this is how I went. Okay, that's a good thing to talk about. And it's a good thing if you know ahead of time what's really important to them, that sort of thing. Versus like, okay, their mission organization is like helping people or that sort of thing. Well, you can talk about my last project. So actually off my hours, I chose to help this fundraising, place. They had to tally all of their votes by hand. So I created an application so that they could be able to press a button and be able to vote, like do voting, automatically. I'm not saying I did that. I actually did do that. That is one project I worked on. But, talking to that. Kristen?
I wanted to tie in this mission and the team with a question that Ford asked in Slack. And again, I think sometimes we joke. So for everyone who's on this call, myself, Becca, and Cecily have a background in organizational development or organizational psychology, which is kind of looking at all these pieces. So it's very easy for me to like see this and put it together. So this is how it's going to come together. As I cough, most companies, if you click on their careers page, and again, it depends on the size of the company, but most companies now, it's pretty common to have like a join us, a career page, a become part of the team. And so I recommend one of the things I feel like people don't do is really look at that page. And so if we look at like everything we've looked at so far, but specifically focus on this mission element, read what they say about what they want with their team and what they want their team to become with the company. You will see this aspect of we, love to retain our employees and we provide you with the tools to be successful in the organization so that you'll stay for so many years. And so Ford's question in the chat was kind of along the idea that we kind of touched on, but is it good to take a position in a tech company just to get your foot in the door? It doesn't really matter on the position. It may not be exactly what you want, but just to get in there. And my response was yes, because you just never know what those opportunities are. But also in the fact that sometimes if you apply for multiple positions and you get in front of different people, those leaders then collectively say, this is actually where they're better fit. We should make sure they go here first to then get to here. Or they may even say, hey, we just think that you're going to be a better fit on this team before you can get to this point. And so Ford asked a little bit about that and then asked, was it good to be transparent to let them know kind of that journey that you want to go on? And so that was a kind of weird, long-winded question and comment. But Becca, I don't know what your thoughts would be on that as a whole.
No, I'm actually really glad you said this because this is important, especially when researching a company. So let's say you're applying to a company like ours. We have 9 employees. We're about to have a couple more, but let's say like we're pretty small. And so if you come into an interview with a company like ours, and we're not a tech company, but like, let's say there are 9-member or even 3-member tech companies, and you come in and say, well, I would like to be the director of engineering one day. And they look and they think, that's going to take a long time. Like, what is your timeline? Well, I would like to do that in 1 year. Okay, well, we're probably not the company for you. And so you might shoot yourself in the foot by having these great ambitions, and maybe in that case, probably unrealistic expectations. But know your company, are those trajectories even possible within that organization and company? Do those titles exist? Are the people holding those roles, they've been in it like 20, 30 years, so maybe they are close to retirement, or, okay, they actually just hired my dream person. That doesn't mean that you couldn't maybe get that job, turnover happens or life happens, that sort of thing. But kind of take a look at that landscape. I think that's really important. And I do think sometimes we've had people not land jobs because they're like, we love their ambition. We love the fact that they want to be somewhere, but we don't have that place for them. And we don't want them coming in, being completely unsatisfied and leaving us in 6 months, or something like that. So kind of be aware. But if they do have those opportunities, I think it's also just important to be a little broader in your goal set. So not saying in 1 year, I want this exact title. Instead, talk about what you plan to learn in that process. I want to learn in this next year how to do automation better. I would like to become a better leader. Whether I have the title or not, I believe you can be a leader at an individual contributor level or a director level. And so kind of being able to be a little bit more adaptable and flexible in the terminology that you use and not be so tied to a particular thing. Is that helpful?
I'm waiting to see if Ford responds. I see Ford typing, so. But I think just from what you said, I think it's that idea of don't feel bad if you want to be in a position above of what you're applying for, but be realistic that there's a lot of organizations that would love to just bring people in internally to a new role versus them always trying to find someone else. Because at the end of the day, if we talk about money, it's a lot cheaper for a company to retain you than have to find a whole nother employee. So if you're
Absolutely.
going into this mindset of like, this is a place I would love to grow and I could see myself being at, if I have the potential of being in this role, they see that is the progression that you might want to take. I work at Francis Tuttle Technology Center, and there are people here who have been here for 13 to 20 years, and they've had 4 to 5 different jobs that some of them are completely different. But as Becca mentioned, the leadership aspect was what was needed, or the understanding of this technical skill was needed. And so they may have moved teams, they may have moved campuses, but the school just likes to know, like, yeah, we are keeping people here because we know at the end of the day, they're good for our customer, which is the student.
Yes. And I know that our time's running out, but I want to add on to there is just that when you said, like, should I go ahead and apply? Should I get a job? Absolutely. Especially like if you were entering in as like a junior developer or entering in as like juniors, like support or help desk or something like that, get your foot in the door. And even if that's not the organization you want to be with forever, gain that experience. Because I'll tell you, as much as, because my last presentation, I spoke all about how tech is booming and how there is a place for you, but that first role is insanely difficult to get. I'm just going to be honest about this. All the time I hear from developers, it takes them like about a year to land that first job. And that's hard. That's a hard wait. So go ahead, get in there, gain those experiences, and figure out like where you want to head, and whatever languages or technologies you need to learn, try to learn that in that job, and take any opportunity you can to grow in that. I think that's going to be really important. So I'm going to wrap that up there. I think that we kind of covered competitors and industry, and we're at our time now. So
thank you so much, Becca. We appreciate you covering this topic. I know this is something I feel like at multiple times of the year in our Slack channels, this is all of that, less technical, soft, which I hate to say that, but those elements of the job hunt that are just as important as this is what I'm capable of doing. Because for a lot of companies, sometimes it may not be that they care about that you can do X, Y, and Z, but are you going to do it in this manner? and be a cool person to have a part of the team. And so knowing that you understand the big picture, knowing that you understand what is happening beyond this job for the company helps them to feel like you really want to be a part of, company X's team, and that you're going to help them in making as much money as they can possibly make, and that you're excited about that. So thank you again, Becca and Diana, for being on the chat, being on the webinar, providing information. For those of you who this was helpful, please again join us via Slack. This channel will stay open throughout month to month so that we can continue these conversations, but also look at our #jobs channel within Slack so that you can see job opportunities. And to kind of add on to what we've been covering, for the people who post those jobs, message them individually and say, hey, I'd love to talk to you about what you just posted. Sometimes I post jobs and I don't know much, but I'll tell you somebody I know who knows more about that company. But, there are job opportunities that are being posted every day in that jobs channel. And there are plenty of people who I'm sure would love to be able to talk to people one-on-one. You can actually use Slack to do a phone call. If you didn't know that, there's a little phone icon and you can call each other via the app if that is more comfortable for you. So we invite you to utilize the system that we have with Techlahoma to be able to find that first job or find your next job. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Dozy, again for being our stream guru and host. And we will see you guys next month.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.